Live from Long Beach, California, we're going to talk today about placemaking in streets. This will be a visual presentation, so let's focus in immediately on the gentleman standing in the left panel, perceiving the world of place, of being what we see in the four images. This is the world that we all envision. But it turns out, because we took our eye off of the target, we've ended up with something very different, where people are no longer able to do the things they want and discover the opportunities. And indeed, almost anywhere we look in America, almost any town, we see conditions like this, which happens to be in Tallahassee, Florida, where we went crazy building for the wrong thing, and now we're finding this has wrecked our economy, our health, and our sense of vibrancy and place. So in this presentation, we're going to talk about how do we restore, recover, rejuvenate our streets, going from faceless and placeless to those where we fall in love, where when we rebuild a street, we're rebuilding local economies. And we're doing it one town at a time. This is what it's going to take to do the restoration and to get local economies back on track and to create the proper human habitat for people to go from one place to another. So in this set of photomorph images, you can see we can take lanes away on some roads and now create and build that village lifestyle. And we're doing this in every state, almost every region of the country in North America. So for example, Doug was able to perceive that this road, which had been 4 lanes, which the county was going to blow up into 6 lanes, by just understanding a little bit of the science, he was able to say, well, if you've got the money to do this, we're going to take it down to 2 lanes, and created the Great Art Walk in Rochester, University Avenue. It was one person who came to understand the role of streets to rebuild the lives. Same could be said of a simple alley in Victoria, British Columbia. Same alley, all we had to do was fix the deck a little bit and then start to create the sense of identity, place, character. And this is truly what we're talking about in placemaking, that we're going from those places that we love, where we'll spend time, we'll go to, we'll draw, we'll gather there with our friends, and use this as our inspirations for where we want to be over time. Once we have a good image in our own mind, those activities we want to celebrate, those lifestyles that we want to bring together, then we can find the volunteers, find the funds in order to make streets where people want to get married, where they want to walk and share, and in time, a number of people will want to actually take up residence. So this is what we're talking about with placemaking. There are a couple of indicators of a successful place. One is people actually kick off their shoes, now they're defenseless, and again, getting back to Rochester, a street that got rebuilt, and any place that comes to celebrate life, these are the scenes we're looking for. That these are naturally occurring scenes, they're not forced, and they really bring everything together. We add science to our discipline of streets. Donald Appleyard, working in the 70s, was one of the earliest pioneers to realize the vitality of streets is directly tied to the volume of traffic and also the speed of traffic. That as traffic volumes and speed pick up, the number of friends that you have drops to, in this case, virtually none, from 3 if the road is working correctly, and the number of associates drops at equal numbers. It's important for us to understand that the attitude that was taken in our country for so many years, we now know is wrong. And we know it's wrong because all it did was build traffic. But now the modern traffic engineer who gets it understands the importance of building compact villages, place, and to build a strong civilization or habitat But we need to understand it's not just about the streets, it's what we did to the streets and other changes that were made. So this is a famous street in Grand Rapids that was transformed over time to be made faceless. Indeed, so that when motors drove faster, they would feel comfortable. If the buildings had a lot of character, the motors no longer felt comfortable, or they'd slow down. And truly, we made a series of mistakes, not just in one profession, but in many, if not even most. Today, though, we know that if we're going to have strong, vibrant communities and healthy people, then it means we have to recapture our sense of road making, place making, and understand how the two fit together. And so the Michigan Municipal League has put together a powerful book. This can be acquired on Amazon, and indeed brought together some of the best economists in America to describe the importance of place. We want to tell this story that if you can imagine yourselves in the 1400s, this was our concept of the solar system, that everything rotated around the Earth. Well, today we know that's wrong. But at the time, Galileo, Copernicus were ostracized for coming up with this concept, the only one that would prove out mathematically, and of course, the only one that is absolutely correct. Now, I will say something that is today considered pure heresy. What if this is not true? What if our entire economy does not revolve around the automobile, but instead around people? And that's what we're talking about. How do we bring our sensibilities back to the reality of where real economies, sustainable economies, work and work for the long time? So let's get up high in the sky and look down on two possibilities for the same corridor. And in this case, one is designed for the car, the other is designed for people. It's that simple. And if it doesn't make all the sense from an aerial perspective, then we go to grade and then realize, holy cow. And now, by the way, let's put some dollar amounts to it. Strip style development pencils out somewhere between $5 and $15 per leased foot. But a urban form, traditional urban, is worth $25 to $65 per leased foot. We can see that with the buildings, that if we diagram this, and this is something you can get at our Walkable and Livable Communities website, a series of posters, and this illustrates the importance of buildings to set the right tone. We can say that in terms of almost everything, including road safety, that if a road looks like this, we'll get the wrong behavior, but as we build an appropriate village and enclose it with good green and buildings and parking, we get this. And not only do we make far more money, but we build a place where people socialize, social equity is improved. And to celebrate just one person doing this, when Brighton decided they would go this route to rebuild, to design for people, the mayor of the town said, okay, I want to rebuild my garage anyway. I will put it to the street and honor the street. It also comes right down to an individual making money. The scene on the right became the scene on the left. My good friend Linda Polanski invested $150,000 to pay a down payment to buy a grand building. And within a year, she was worth $15 million. We create the address. So she then bought the next block. And you can see in its transformation. And here you see it in its evolution. And then the completed street. And then she bought the next block. Linda retired in a short number of years with $45 million in her pocket off of a $150,000 investment, knowing the importance of building place. Today we know that area. Many people worked on creating South Beach that we know today, but it had to have this start. Same is true in West Palm Beach, a virtually deserted downtown was seen as a great prize if people would work together, and just one investor alone brought in over $1 billion. This is really what we're talking about, that we take something that is classic, that's historic, is the great form that we always had before the automobile. This is the first development in America, Beacon Hill, and the cool thing about it is centered and has the connectivity, so everything you would like to do over a day or a week or even a lifetime, you can pretty well do from here. But then we changed our town forms and came up with houses and sidewalks and streets and all the things, but we disconnected, and therefore this is not place, it's not meaningful. Many people today no longer even know who their friends and neighbors are, unless they travel to another location. That ripples out in many ways. Notice here that Cheryl, a woman we met in Edmonton, Canada, realized that the reason she can't find volunteers is that when she went to shop for a neighborhood, she forgot to buy a community. We're changing the language of what we do as well. And so here we see all 5 people doing the same thing. And today the only word we use in America for what they're doing is loitering. And yet this is a place to celebrate, and what these people are doing is a measure of success. In Europe, this is called lingering. And the longer the linger time, the more successful the place. Let's talk about happiness. The lower line is a true reflection of the measure of happiness. And we can see there was even a peak happiness that happened in the 60s. And we don't know why. But happiness is what we really, truly should be measuring from here on out. So here we are in Bryant Park in the 60s. A reminder that, well, it wasn't nirvana. But this is the same park, almost the same angle today, after we made a few minor modifications in placemaking to bring it alive, and today it truly is the front porch of America. What about this street? Its functional classification is an arterial, but so is the lower one. The lower street moves traffic, and it keeps it moving, and it moves more. It has much higher property values, and when we get to the grade, we realize why it makes money where the top one is under stress for everything it must do. This is a safer road, it's more beautiful, it outperforms in every way. When we start to figure out what it is we wish to measure, then we can come up with the right ingredients. So, placemaking is an act that must start with the street. We capture the edges, we capture the center, we make the street look less hostile. And then, however, there has to be the complement where we incentivize the investments to come to the street so that over time we create that sense of enclosure and transparency and complexity and imageability and human scale. And the street stays organic, and it may change again over time. We can transform almost any street in America, including our arterials, and this is where we really do have to make the investments, because this is truly how we laid out the patterns in our cities. So working with University Place, this street was transformed over a period of 1 year to become this street, where you can walk, where you can bike, where over time we now invite new buildings. You can see it again when it was first built, and then you can see 9 years later how it takes on the green and the sense of place. Indeed, over time, we narrowed down the travel lanes, widened the bike lanes, and the street outperformed in terms of safety and even moving traffic very well. In San Diego, La Jolla Boulevard, a 5-lane road, we transformed by taking out traffic signals and stop signs, taking out lanes, going down to 2 lanes from 5. And again, you can see the change in this entire scene, and know that the retail life picked up 30%, the social life doubled, and so did walking, biking, and so on. So we take, again, by functional classification, the same type of a road. We see the way we used to build to add value and beauty to homes, But now, today, with the same road, with the same charge, now less safe, you would not want to build homes to a street like this, so you don't get the walking, the biking, the security that comes with that. So one of the most important measures for us to consider is how to now create a new beacon, a new element to provide for the measure of the things we love, the things we want, and to know how to get to where we'd like to be. And we'll just close out this presentation with a few transformations. We look at what we have too much of and how we might transform that same street into a place of love and dignity and pride. And this is truly what it's like when we build place. But let's also look at how any community can take whatever their assets are. For example, in Golden, Colorado, they moved boulders. It cost them $750,000. But today, it's a place that brings in $2, $3, $4 million a year in order to fill their hotels, their motels, to honor placemaking. And we'll close out, too, with some images from Vancouver, a city that has built its edge to the water. And by doing this, the ability to now celebrate all the single-family homes that were there, adding great value to every property on the entire peninsula by building the place. And to close this out wholly, to point out that our organization loves to lead walking audits. We're doing one today for this event, and teach others how to see with renewed eyes, to have fewer cars. In fact, we waited 15 minutes for the first car to come on this road in Vancouver, largely because people were walking and biking, going every direction. It requires a different way to plan, a different way to see value and prosperity, but to understand placemaking is a combination of protecting and preserving the right places for people to come to be seen, the right scale of buildings so that we create the enclosure for a trail, and to know that we are now doing this in cities of every size. Pasadena, California, for example, with some proper modifications to its street, now looks like, acts like, feels like this, and has become a great magnet drawing people together. I want to close with a story about where to begin in your own community. It starts with any bold act of your own. For example, Rex Burkholder, after leading me for a walk for 2 hours, when we finally got back to his house, I realized this is what National Geographic we call a bell ringer, the picture that tells the story. Rex found this bench in a dumpster, put a nice little sign on it, and proceeded to invite people to rest. A few years after he did this, Rex got a letter in the mail. A gentleman indicated that he had just lost his great friend and wrote Rex this nice letter saying it was the bench that allowed his friend to live out his last years in dignity. He needed a place to rest on the way to the store, to rest on the way home. And it was a simple act of love that brought this together. So I encourage all of you, wherever you are, if you're an elected leader, if you're a staff member, if you are an advocate for change, if you're an engineer, an architect, anyone, start with the notion that our towns, our streets, everything that's open space that belongs to the public and should now be transformed over time into places of the heart. And when we do, then we return the prosperity and the health of our nation. Thank you, folks. Much appreciated.